Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest conversation with friends. I have a very special guest for you here today, and I recently met her over in Perth, and it's the delightful Mandy McFarland, who is the CEO of Educate Plus. Hello, Mandy. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, hello, Michelle. It's so nice to be here, and I love chatting to you. We hit it off instantly when we met in person, and I'm sure this will just be a continuation of that conversation.
Absolutely. So, look, Mandy, you have 30 years experience in this sector, particularly in the schools and universities. Um, but rather than me kind of read off what I know about you from kind of my prospect research, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit of what you have done.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Well, my whole career really has been spent in advancement, and I started my career in South Africa. I started off in the tertiary sector, what was well and truly an old-fashioned term called public relations, and that's where I
Yeah.
started, and quickly sort of branched out into alumni development and fundraising. And fundraising at that stage was actually still pretty new. It wasn't a hugely developed skill or activity. And I just loved it right from the get-go. So I did a lot of community relations stuff, and over my time, I've run call centers, I've done all sorts of things, I've done all aspects of it, and I've always just really loved it. I've loved the educational aspect. I love
Yeah.
working with young people, although in our roles you don't often have a lot to do with the young people directly, but you have things to do with their achievements, I guess, and how to
Yes.
support them and help them. And then my family and I immigrated to Australia in 2002, and I went for various interviews, and I could easily have continued on in the tertiary sector, which is where I'd come from and where I was comfortable.
Yeah.
But I had two little girls, and I got this wonderful job opportunity at a school called St Hilda's, which is an independent girls' school in Perth. Very traditional, old, amazing school. And my daughters both went there, and it was just the most wonderful 12 years of my life. I was really tasked to start a philanthropic activity. So
Yeah.
it was the first time that fundraising had been done there in a more capital campaign kind of way. They'd always been raising money, small amounts of money through lots of hard work and lots of volunteer engagement, but never had a strategy around it. So,
Yeah.
and we did amazing things in the time I was there. We built a performing arts centre, a 50-metre heated pool, a brand new junior school, a science centre. We did amazing things, and most of them were building related, and gave such opportunity to the girls, grew the scholarship fund. There was it was incredible time. And the principal that I was working for, who I just loved working for, and we got on so well,
Yeah.
was retiring, and I just thought it was time for change and time to do something entirely different, and was quite keen to revisit the tertiary sector, because there's a special vibe around tertiary, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I thought, but I also know how what a beast universities can be, and it's
Yeah.
slow moving. And once you've worked in an environment like a school where it's pretty quick turnaround, you can get things done really quickly. I thought, I don't know if I'm quite ready to go back to the bureaucracy that exists in universities. So I did a middle road, and I went to a residential college called St Catherine's that was actually associated with UWA, the University of Western Australia, and was there for 7 years doing exactly the same thing, starting a philanthropy activity, getting fundraising going, getting an alumni program going. And it, again, was just the most amazing 7 years. I learned so much. It was right in the middle of COVID, and as you can imagine, yes, a residential college is a bit like a cruise ship on land.
Yeah.
You've got 400 young people that you're trying to keep safe and abiding by all the rules and laws that were at the time. But incredible activities, and loved it. And in all the 20 years that I've been in Australia, I've belonged to Educate Plus as a member. Love the community. In my experience, I've done all the things that Educate Plus supports, which is fundraising, marketing, alumni, and admissions. And I've done all those activities and met incredible people. So when the role came up for CEO, I sort of felt like it's taken me my whole career to get to this point where I've got all the skills. I know the people, I know the community, love the community, such values alignment with my own way of working, and applied for the role. And it was tough. It was a really tough interview process. I know there were lots of great applicants, and I was fortunate enough to get the role. And I'm in my happy place that I could possibly be. I absolutely love
it. You just ooze passion for everything that you do, and I guess for this conversation, with we do Educate Plus does support many different areas of education, but fundraising, I guess, is our connection with the fundraising nest. And I dipped my toes into university fundraising many years ago back in New Zealand. And yes, it's very different fundraising. I didn't I was only there 14 months or so. It definitely wasn't for me. But what I did learn was a huge amount of quick learning around the capital campaigns and the major gifts. So Mandy, I know you've lived and breathed this world, but you also are very aware of the sector in general. And I can see there's quite a difference of fundraising between schools and universities. That's why there are different organisations that support and educate general fundraising, and then there's a targeted kind of wise Educate Plus exists. Can you just describe some of the kind of, I guess, the differences you feel or positive things from kind of schools and universities fundraising versus, I guess, other fundraising?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, it's the communities that both of those types of organizations have around them.
Yeah.
So, you are immediately building a prospect base of people that are like-minded, are passionate, understand what you're doing. And so from a fundraising perspective, you're not trying to sell your cause to the same extent that a not-for-profit or a charity might have to do.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, they've also got communities around them for sure. The tertiary sector for me was much more it's sort of technical in a way, and it was much bigger teams and they had lots of people working on bespoke elements of the program. Where schools don't have that luxury. So generally you'd find, school would have a much leaner team. They would be very multi-skilled. At best they would have a director who was driving strategy. They may have a major gifts person and a bequest person. And then annual appeals would fall into someone in the team's remit. So not a lot of dedicators, and not as much as a prospect research than the universities. They do so much work in that space, and I think that's one of the huge advantages. And I loved that. I thought it was interesting, so data driven. And in saying that, schools have become a lot more data driven. The analytics are much more important, and they're really analyzing how people give, what drives them, projects, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of similarity. I love the creativity in schools, and as I sort of alluded to earlier, it's a quick turnaround. So you could have an idea tomorrow, and you could literally be starting to sort of implement it tomorrow. That takes a lot longer in a university context. Because there's so many more players that have to be part of that approval process. And also the strategic plans are vastly different. A lot of the fundraising for both, more in schools is very building fund orientated, because that's what gives the biggest impact to the students. It's cutting edge sort of technology and environments. Whereas universities are, they're doing scholarship programs, they're doing research programs, that they sort of range of offer on offer for donors is bigger and wider. I think there's a lot to be learned both ways. And that's why I love the fact that we've got tertiary members and members from schools. And, I really love it when there's interaction and they can see I could learn this from you, and gosh, we could do this better. Absolutely. Even though we're a huge university, we could learn from you as a school, and vice versa. There's a lot to be learned, in terms of what the long-term pipeline looks like.
Yes, and I think there's the schools, universities, and then there's, the non-for-profit organisations kind of out in the community and things. Mm-hmm. I think one big thing I notice that they all have in common, and that we can learn from each other, is that donor care, that donor love, that stewardship piece is it's the same. We need to look after the people who support us regardless of what we represent. And I think there's a real strong crossover. I think some of the best examples I see is from one of our mavens, Lynn Western. I know you work closely with Lynn too. And Lynn is amazing at sharing some amazing donor kind of care communications that she puts out. I just love seeing the stuff that she puts out, because schools and universities are good. Well, some like everything, but when they do it good, they can do it really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, talking about Lynn, we're hosting a conference in Perth.
Yes, that she's coming over for.
Coming over, and Lynn is amazing. She seems to come up with new ideas all the time on how to improve stewardship, and and you're right, stewardship is so important. And I think, again, in a smaller community, it's so much easier to have that kind of stewardship, because anybody personally, and that's tougher in universities. You've got huge communities, huge graduating classes where you wouldn't know everybody. Where you're in a school, you'd know most young
Yeah.
person that's actually graduating, you'd know them and their family and potentially their wider family who may have been part of the school community. So yeah, there's a definite advantage in schools in that regard.
One of the questions we normally talk about is kind of, I'm going to skip quick to one of the things around the future of fundraising. And just before I hit record there, we mentioned a report that has come out by the Productivity Commission that is really, really alarming you and many other people in the sector. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about it, but I do know that it's going to have a huge impact. Mandy, would you like to tell it, what's going on? What does this report mean for your world?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. So the Productivity Commission, as you probably know, is a body that is an independent body that provides research and advice to the government on a whole range of things. And at the moment, they are leading an inquiry into philanthropy in Australia and how we can double giving by 2030. So fantastic topic and so timely. We were really excited when we actually, saw that the inquiry was launched. They called for submissions, and Educate Plus and a whole host of other organisations made submissions. And one of our submissions, in our submission was a whole lot of suggestions on how you can actually make it easier for schools in particular to broaden their reach and get more donors on board. And the draft report came out on the 30th of November, and we were so disappointed because one of our primary suggestions was to actually widen and broaden DGR status, particularly around for schools in general. So it was a very blanket. Universities have blanket DGR status, so you can any project that you support gets tax deduction. Where in schools it's only building funds, libraries, and scholarships. So we had suggested doing the same thing that's happening in universities to try and broaden that for schools, because more and more schools are running well-being programs and learning programs, very bespoke things that are helping our young people and helping our communities. Anyway, the report came out, and one of the recommendations is actually to remove DGR status from building funds because they feel that there's a nexus, and this is the word that's been used in the report, between tax deduction and personal gain, and that there's not enough public impact. None of that could be further from the truth, and we just are absolutely gobsmacked that would be a recommendation. We're really deeply concerned about it. So we're in the process at the moment of gathering a lot of information from our members. There's been an outcry in my email, just went the very next day, everyone just going, what's going on? How did we get to this position? So we're going to be holding a webinar next week with all our members, and anybody is welcome to join just to gather information. We need some evidence. We're really hoping we can persuade the Commission to reconsider this recommendation, because it's going to be hugely damaging and quite counterintuitive in many ways to what they're trying to achieve.
That's my first thoughts. I do know that New Zealand are watching closely there. They were so excited that Australia decided to create this commission to double philanthropy, and they are looking at New Zealand to follow suit and do the same. Yes. But these kinds of things, I know when I led an organised peak body in New Zealand, when government make changes to proposed changes that are going to impact the sector in the completely opposite way, it's fearful. You feel powerless, and I think this is a really important. I mean, what would be the impact if they go ahead with this? What do you?
There's lots of impact, Michelle. I mean, it's obviously the money impact, the financial impact, because lots of donors, as we know, give to building funds because there is tax deduction involved. I'm not saying all of them, and I'm certainly not saying that that's a prime motivator, but it's a very good incentive to help.
Absolutely. Any major gift, anything, any giving, be up, above $5, that you're being rewarded for your generosity. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, no. So financially, so it will cut down on the amount of giving. Whether they will continue supporting the other two funds, because at this stage it looks like the Scholarship Fund and the Library Fund will hold their DGR status, but that's still to be discussed. These were just recommendations; they haven't been accepted yet. What it's going to mean for schools is they're going to ultimately then have to fund building developments out of their operating costs, and that will have an impact on students, on recruitment, on learning programs. Yeah. So the impact's going to be massive, and it's going to affect the whole educational system, because I think for most independent schools, having good facilities enhances their teaching and enhances the experience for students. So we're going to be seriously curtailing that.
And then the whole concept of generosity, the idea is, we all, what doesn't matter what part of fundraising we're in. I think our fundraising is a word that, makes me itch a little bit. We are in the business, as Ken Burnett says, of inspiration. We're the people that, inspiring generosity, particularly, I believe strongly for the future generations, because there has been a huge shift. We know that majority of donors in all aspects of giving are, in the kind of older age brackets, and we have to bring that generosity legacy through to the younger generation. And if they're going to make giving not as, I guess, beneficial, it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. And so we really have got a good strategy. We're collaborating with a number of other organizations that are equally concerned and support educational fundraising. And we're hoping that the Commission will take our concerns seriously. We've straight away, issued our concern and said this is very worrying, and we will gather more information and data and hope we can have a robust conversation around this. Advocacy in a field like this and an organization like Educate Plus is so important, because we do have the opportunity to influence policy, which then in the long term can change our community.
You can, we were able to, you can, and we successfully changed the law in New Zealand during COVID for a law that they put in that was detrimental. So you can, the power of the people works. Tell me, Mandy, does this apply to all fundraising for buildings? So if it was for hospitals or?
No, just for schools. And at the moment, and again, there's these, these reports are often, there's such nuance, and you really have to understand what it is they're saying exactly. At this stage, it says all primary and secondary schools. Now, that could include public schools and independent. We feel at the moment the focus is on independent schools, because surely they are definitely the ones with the building funds that are raising the dollars. Not a lot of public schools have got foundations or building funds. Again, many of the independent schools have got their own independent foundations. So, how that impacts on the foundations, we're still investigating that, and we're seeking legal advice on a lot of this stuff, because it's going to have an impact that we have to be sure we understand. And we don't want to be alarmist about it. We understand the Commission is a really important body doing important work. We're just not sure where their evidence is or where their data is to suggest that there's personal gain in making a donation to a building fund, because as you would know, hundreds of alumni who have long left the school or, give money and have no gain there, just want to do the right thing and want to do good for future generations. So we're not entirely sure where that's come from. We also know that most of the independent schools have got very tight governance around anything associated with personal gain. That it just doesn't exist in the world that I know.
We all adhere to the ethical codes that bind us as professionals in our business of making a lasting impact to the causes that we care about. I think and I think any suggestion that just where do they stop with the, if they can get one thing through, it just then concerns you of the thinking. This is definitely something this video will go out. When's the webinar, Mandy?
It's on Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Yes, next Wednesday.
We'll try and get this webinar out. I'm sure it will be of interest to many, many people. And yes, let's maybe revisit this and see where it's going. Mandy, outside of fundraising, I know you've just had a most amazing, fabulous trip to Europe, and we're lucky enough to be at the rugby semi-final and final. So what does Mandy love to do outside of work?
You know what? Work is a real love and a passion for me. So I do work a lot, but I love it. But I also I love reading. I love cooking. I love just spending time with interesting people, and my family are fabulous. I just love spending time with them. I've got 2 grown daughters, and we're at that wonderful stage of parenthood where it's just a delight to be together, and you all, a group of adults having very robust conversations about a whole lot of interesting things, and I just love that. So we love travel. I've got a broad range of things, and I read very widely on a whole. I've got lots of eclectic taste around reading, and it's not anything specific. When there's time, I fill it.
Tell me, was the rugby cup final everything I imagine it was?
We never actually got to the final, Michelle. We actually watched that in Bordeaux, but we're at the semis, and it was absolutely incredible. The atmosphere, and you to be in a city like Paris, which is gearing up for the Olympics, and it was really interesting to see all the branding. They were in the middle of a World Cup, and there was lots of branding on the World Cup, but there was so much branding around the Olympics, and you think, go Paris, you know what I mean? You've got your ducks in a row. It was fabulous. Just brilliant, really, really brilliant. The rugby in the semi-finals was not as good as the rugby in the quarterfinals as the actual rugby match, but boy, the atmospheres the Argentinians were so wonderful and loud and singing, and it was just
I was in New Zealand actually. We were doing our Nest Fest for the semi-final, and none of my friends, it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I'm going to the pub. So I ended up going to the pub on my own at 6 o'clock in the morning to watch it. And you're right, it wasn't as tense as it could have been, that game, but it was still nice to be there and in New Zealand.
It was great. It was such
Mandy, it's been an absolute delight chatting to you, and we absolutely love what you're doing. And I know next year the fundraising Nest has definitely has some alignments with what you're doing, and that's what we're here to do, is collaborate, share, and just enhance and grow the opportunities for the sector. And I know we've had some conversations, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to connect on a professional level next year and see what opportunities are open to us. But it was so lovely to introduce you to our community, and good luck with your webinar next week. That really is it's great to be able to actually actively advocate as well, isn't it? Although it's challenging, it's something I really love, is advocacy. And when you can gather momentum, and it's another kind of part of the business that's exciting too.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat to you. You're an inspiration in terms of what you're doing at the moment. So I love chatting to you.
Thank you, Mandy.
Go from strength to strength.
Thank you. And until next time, take care.
Thanks. I will. Bye.
Bye.